You have done the shorter fasts, the 16-8, maybe the 24-hour, maybe the 72, and somewhere in the process you started wondering what happens if you go further. What actually happens to your muscles on day 4? Why people report a strange mental clarity emerging around day 3 that they did not expect? Whether the biology at day 7 is categorically different from the biology at day 2? And whether a body without food for 7 consecutive days is running mechanisms that shorter fasts simply cannot reach. This script does not tell you whether to do it. It tells you precisely what the science says is happening inside your body every single day if you do. And the most important recent research contains findings that most fasting content has never reported at all. Here is the finding that frames everything in this script. A study published in Molecular Metabolism in April 2025 by Commissati, Fontana and colleagues at the University of Verona and the University of Sydney investigated the effects of a medically supervised water-only fast with a mean duration of 9.8 days in 20 middle-aged volunteers. Using high-dimensional plasma proteomics measuring 1,317 proteins, the research confirmed multiple adaptations to prolonged fasting, including preservation of skeletal muscle and bone, enhanced lysosomal biogenesis, increased lipid metabolism via PPAR-alpha signaling, and, most strikingly, significant reductions in circulating amyloid beta proteins AB40 and AB42, the key components of brain amyloid plaques that characterize Alzheimer's disease. Extended fasting did not simply improve metabolic markers, it measurably reduced the circulating concentration of the proteins that accumulate into the plaques driving neurodegenerative disease. That finding alone deserves more attention than most fasting content has given it. Here is the foundational biology you need before the day-by-day timeline makes complete biological sense. Your body runs on fuel. Under normal eating conditions, the primary fuel is glucose, stored as glycogen in your liver and muscles. The liver holds approximately 100 grams. Your muscles hold approximately 400 to 500 grams. This reserve represents roughly 2,000 calories of readily available fuel. In the fed state, insulin is elevated. Fat stores are locked behind the insulin signal that prevents hormone-sensitive lipase from activating, and autophagy is suppressed by the mTOR signaling that nutrient availability activates. Think of your body as a hybrid vehicle with 2 fuel tanks. The primary tank is filled with glucose from your diet. The secondary tank is stored fat. Under normal conditions, the primary tank is continuously refilled by meals, and the secondary tank is almost never touched because the primary tank never fully empties. A 7-day fast empties the primary tank completely. The secondary tank opens, and the metabolic machinery waiting for this signal, the ketogenic enzymes, the lysosomal cleanup systems, the stem cell regenerative pathways, and the autophagy program the fed state perpetually suppresses, begins running for the first time in years. Day 1, the final fuel from your last meal is metabolized. Insulin falls. In the first 6 to 12 hours, your body is running on glucose from the last meal and the beginning of glycogen breakdown from the liver. Insulin is declining but still present. Blood glucose is being maintained in the normal range through hepatic glycogen release. Hunger is present and driven primarily by habitual hunger patterns and ghrelin peaks at your normal meal times. This is not genuine metabolic hunger. It is conditioned hunger from the learned expectation of food at specific times of day. By 12 to 16 hours, liver glycogen begins depleting significantly. The liver begins ramping up gluconeogenesis, the manufacture of glucose from non-carbohydrate sources, including glycerol from fat breakdown and amino acids from protein. This is normal physiology, not muscle wasting. The gluconeogenic amino acids come primarily from the turnover of visceral proteins and damaged cellular components, not from structural muscle tissue. By 24 hours, the first meaningful ketone production begins as the liver converts free fatty acids from adipose tissue into beta-hydroxybutyrate and acetoacetate. BHB is rising, but not yet at concentrations that produce significant metabolic benefit. Autophagy is beginning to activate, but has not yet reached its deepest program. Day 2, glycogen is gone. Ketosis begins in earnest, the keto transition. The most difficult period of a 7-day fast is typically day 2. This is the day when glycogen stores are substantially depleted and the body has not yet adapted to running efficiently on ketones. The brain, accustomed to glucose as its primary fuel, is beginning the enzymatic upregulation required to oxidize ketones efficiently. This transition produces the characteristic symptoms of the keto adaptation phase: brain fog, headache, fatigue, irritability, difficulty concentrating. These are not symptoms of pathology. They are the neurological consequence of the brain's fuel supply switching from a highly familiar substrate to one it hasn't used predominantly since infancy. Blood glucose has stabilized through gluconeogenesis. BHB is rising measurably. Insulin has fallen to its genuine baseline, the lowest LH level it reaches during a 24-hour cycle in people who eat regularly. At this insulin baseline, hormone-sensitive lipase in adipose tissue is fully activated. Fat cells are releasing free fatty acids into the bloodstream at their maximum rate. The liver is converting those free fatty acids into ketone bodies at an accelerating pace. The fuel transition is underway, and by the end of day 2, BHB concentrations are typically between 0.5 and 1.5 millimoles per liter, the lower range of nutritional ketosis. Here is the question almost everyone asks before attempting a 7-day fast: what happens to your muscles? And the honest answer is not what most people expect. The weight loss numbers on the scale during day 2 are dramatic and misleading simultaneously. Research on 7-day fasting by Kolniz and colleagues confirmed that participants lose approximately 5.7 kilograms in the first week, but the composition of that loss is not what most people assume. In the first 2 to 3 days, the majority of weight lost is water. For every gram of glycogen stored in the body, 3 to 4 grams of water is held alongside it. Depleting 500 grams of glycogen releases 2 to 3 liters of water. The dramatic scale drop of days 1 and 2 reflects glycogen-bound water leaving the body, not fat tissue being burned. The fat loss is real and meaningful, but it accumulates more slowly than the water weight suggests. Day 3. Full ketosis. The brain is switching fuel. Autophagy deepens. By day 3, BHB concentrations are typically between 0.5 and 3.0 millimoles per liter. The brain is now receiving a substantial proportion of its fuel from ketones and is beginning to function more effectively on this substrate than it did during the transitional fog of day 2. Most people report a marked cognitive improvement on day 3 compared to day 2. Clarity returns. The hunger, which was at its most intense on day 2, begins declining significantly as ketones suppress ghrelin and the hypothalamic neuropeptide signaling that drives hunger. The metabolic hunger signal has been substantially quieted by the ketone environment. Autophagy is deepening significantly by day 3. The mTOR suppression from prolonged nutrient absence and the AMPK activation from energy depletion are both driving the autophagic program at its full depth. Think of autophagy as the maintenance crew that the factory never has time to send in during normal operating hours. Every day the factory runs at full production. Broken machinery accumulates in the corners, damaged components pile up in the corridors, defective proteins sit waiting to be cleared. But the production line is always running, and the maintenance crew can never get access. Fasting stops the production line. The maintenance crew finally gets in. They dismantle the broken machinery, recycle the usable components, and clear everything that has been accumulating for years. By day 3, the maintenance crew has been working uninterrupted for long enough to reach the parts of the factory that daily fasting windows and overnight fasts never give them access to. Research by Matson, Longo, and others established that 3 to 5 days of fasting produces the most robust activation of autophagy measurable in human peripheral blood cells. The cellular cleanup program is running at maximum capacity. Damaged proteins, dysfunctional mitochondria, misfolded protein aggregates, and cellular debris that the fed state perpetually deferred are being systematically dismantled and their components recycled. The growth hormone response to extended fasting reaches significant elevation by day 3. Research confirmed that growth hormone pulses increase dramatically during prolonged fasting as the body's primary protein-sparing mechanism. Growth hormone activates hormone-sensitive lipase in adipose tissue to maintain the free fatty acid supply for ketone production while simultaneously protecting structural muscle protein from catabolism. This is the mechanism that allows extended fasting to proceed without the dramatic muscle wasting that many people fear. Day 4. Protein sparing maximizes. Ketone adaptation completes. By day 4, the metabolic adaptation is essentially complete. BHB concentrations are typically between 3.0 and 5.0 millimoles per liter. The brain has fully upregulated ketone oxidation machinery and is deriving approximately 60 to 70% of its fuel from ketones, with the remainder from gluconeogenesis. Muscle tissue is largely protected by growth hormone and ketone-mediated protein sparing. The 2024 research on 7-day water-only fasting confirmed that muscle strength was preserved throughout the fast, despite significant metabolic adaptation. The same research identified a 13-fold increase in PDK4 expression, the enzyme that suppresses glucose oxidation in muscle to preserve glucose for the brain. The body is not simply burning whatever is available, it is running a sophisticated triage system that prioritizes brain function, preserves muscle contractile capacity, and draws energy from adipose tissue that was designed to provide it. Hunger on day 4 is substantially lower than days 1 and 2. Ketones suppress ghrelin and the hypothalamic neuropeptide Y signaling that drives hunger. The metabolic hunger signal has been substantially quieted by the ketone environment. Day 5. Immune system regeneration begins. The Valter-Longo stem cell findings. Day 5 is where some of the most remarkable research in extended fasting occurs. Research by Valter-Longo and colleagues at USC established that prolonged fasting of 5 or more days produces a cascade beginning with IGF-1 suppression that ends with hematopoietic stem cell regeneration. When IGF-1 falls during extended fasting, the inhibition of stem cell activation is released. Stem cells in the bone marrow begin proliferating. The immune system begins regenerating immune cell populations from a renewed stem cell pool. This mechanism, described in Cell Stem Cell, explains why cycles of prolonged fasting produce measurably reduced circulating white blood cells during the fast, followed by a rebound with freshly generated immune cells during refeeding. The old senescent immune cells cleared through autophagy are replaced with younger, more competent cells from the renewed stem cell pool. By day 5, the reduction in circulating inflammatory markers, including C-reactive protein, interleukin-6, and tumor necrosis factor alpha, is measurable in research populations. The Molecular Metabolism April 2025 study confirmed that prolonged fasting produces significant reductions in inflammatory signaling at the proteomic level. The anti-inflammatory environment of extended fasting is not a secondary consequence of weight loss or metabolic improvement. It is an active and direct effect of the fasting state on inflammatory gene expression and immune cell behavior. Day 6 and 7. Amyloid reduction, lysosomal biogenesis, the deep cellular renewal that shorter fasts never reach. The most scientifically striking findings from the Molecular Metabolism April 2025 research occurred at the end of the extended fasting period and concerned the brain specifically. The study confirmed significant reductions in circulating amyloid beta proteins AB40 and AB42 in volunteers who fasted for a mean of 9.8 days. These are the specific proteins that misfold and aggregate into the amyloid plaques that characterize Alzheimer's disease. Extended fasting reduced their circulating concentrations measurably through a mechanism that involves the enhanced lysosomal biogenesis confirmed in the same study. Lysosomal biogenesis is the formation of new lysosomes, the cellular organelles that contain the enzymatic machinery for breaking down cellular waste, including misfolded proteins. Extended fasting upregulates the TEBF transcription factor that drives lysosomal biogenesis, producing more lysosomes with greater degradative capacity. The result is an enhanced cellular capacity to clear the amyloid and tau proteins that accumulate in brain tissue during the fed state, and that the glymphatic clearance during sleep can only partially address. The extended fast is running a deep cellular clearance program that operates at a level shorter fasting durations and the nightly glymphatic system cannot fully access. The PPAR-alpha lipid metabolism pathway confirmed in the April 2025 study drives the enhanced fat oxidation that characterizes the late fast state and that produces the sustained BHB elevation responsible for the neuroprotective effects described elsewhere in this series. By day 6 and 7, the body is running with maximum metabolic efficiency on the fuel system that the prolonged depletion of glucose availability has fully activated. The honest framing that makes everything above credible. The Molecular Metabolism April 2025 study by Comisati and Fontana colleagues is published in a peer-reviewed journal with high-dimensional plasma proteomics measuring 1,317 proteins. The 7-day water-only fasting and physical performance research confirming preserved muscle strength and 13-fold PDK4 increase is published in a peer-reviewed journal and available on PubMed. The Valter Longo stem cell regeneration and prolonged fasting research is published in Cell Stem Cell. The day-by-day ketosis timeline is established across decades of fasting physiology research from Cahill, Owen, Veach, and others. The growth hormone protein-sparing mechanism during fasting is established across multiple published studies. The honest caveats are these. A 7-day water-only fast is an extreme physiological intervention that carries real risks for most people and should not be attempted without medical supervision. The most significant risks are electrolyte imbalances, particularly hyponatremia from drinking large volumes of plain water without electrolyte replacement, and refeeding syndrome. Refeeding syndrome deserves a precise biological explanation rather than a simple warning. During extended fasting, the body depletes intracellular phosphate, potassium, and magnesium as these electrolytes shift from cells into the bloodstream to maintain plasma concentrations. When food is reintroduced and insulin surges in response to the first carbohydrates arriving, these electrolytes are driven back into cells rapidly, producing dangerous drops in plasma concentrations. The heart muscle, which depends on precise electrolyte balance to maintain its rhythm, is most vulnerable. The correct refeeding protocol, beginning with broths and small amounts of easily digestible food across 48 to 72 hours, prevents the insulin spike that drives the electrolyte shift. This is not caution for its own sake, it is a specific biological mechanism that must be accommodated. A 7-day fast is not appropriate for people with type 1 or type 2 diabetes on insulin or oral hypoglycemic medications, people with a history of eating disorders, pregnant or breastfeeding women, people with established kidney or liver disease, people with gout due to uric acid elevation that prolonged fasting produces, older adults with low baseline muscle mass or frailty, or anyone currently undergoing cancer treatment without oncology guidance.
The benefits described in this script are research findings from medically supervised populations. They do not transfer automatically to unsupervised conditions.
Here is the complete picture of what your body does across 7 consecutive days of fasting. Day 1 empties the liver glycogen and begins the insulin decline. Day 2 depletes the muscle glycogen, begins ketosis, and produces the difficult keto adaptation symptoms. Day 3 establishes full ketosis, runs autophagy at maximum depth, and elevates growth hormone for protein sparing. Day 4 maximizes ketogenic efficiency, preserves muscle strength through PDK4 and growth hormone, and suppresses hunger through the ketone effect on ghrelin. Day 5 begins hemopoietic stem cell regeneration through IGF-1 suppression, reduces inflammatory markers measurably, and begins the immune cell renewal that emerges fully during refeeding. Days 6 and 7 enhance lysosomal biogenesis through TEFB upregulation, reduce circulating amyloid beta proteins through enhanced cellular clearance, and run the PPAR-alpha lipid metabolism pathway at maximum efficiency. The 7 days of fasting is not a longer version of a one-day fast. It is a completely different physiological state that activates biological programs which the fed body never runs, and which shorter fasting durations only begin to access. The autophagy is deeper. The stem cell regeneration is more complete, the amyloid clearance is measurable, the immune renewal is substantial, and the metabolic adaptation to ketones is as complete as it becomes for a body running on fat. Whether 7 days of fasting is appropriate for you depends on your health status, your goals, your metabolic baseline, and the availability of medical supervision. The biology described here is real, peer-reviewed, and more remarkable than most fasting content has communicated. What this video can do is give you the most accurate and current scientific account of what 7 days without food produces inside the human body. Drop a comment right now. Have you ever attempted an extended fast beyond 72 hours? And has this video changed how you think about what the biology of 7 days without food is actually producing at the cellular and molecular level? I read every single one. If this permanently changed how you think about the science of extended fasting, hit subscribe. Every week on The Rewired, we decode the mechanisms behind the habits that determine your health, your brain, and how you age. New mechanism every week. You came to this video with specific questions. What happens to your muscles? Where does the Day 3 clarity come from? Whether the Day 7 biology is categorically different from Day 2? The answer to all three is in the science above. The muscles are preserved by growth hormone and PDK4 while the glycogen-bound water leaves and the fat burns. The clarity arrives when the brain completes its ketone adaptation and the autophagic maintenance crew clears the cellular noise that was impairing it. And the Day 7 biology, the amyloid reduction, the lysosomal biogenesis, the stem cell regeneration, is categorically different from Day 2, not because you went further along the same path, because you crossed into a metabolic territory that shorter durations never reach. The body had the program ready the whole time. It just needed the conditions that 7 consecutive days of fasting creates.